1 o'clock.
Everybody good? Everybody good?
Yes.
Good afternoon and welcome to the continuation of our May 2nd New Bern Board of Aldermen work session to discuss our budget. So since it's a continuation, we'll just jump right in. I will say that City Manager and myself have I'll say a soft stop at 3:30, but a hard stop at 4 o'clock. We have a meeting in Havelock that we would like to be there in person for, so that would allow us enough time to get there. Worst case scenario, if we have to go longer, we can join remotely, and that starts at 4 o'clock, so we definitely need to be on there by then. So, Mr. Hughes, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I did want to go back and visit the governing board for one item that we did not mention. So one of the items under dues and subscriptions was to reinstate membership with the Eastern Carolina Council of Government. So I just wanted to hear any comments that the board may have on that. One of the things that we did see is there were a lot of issues with the COG. A few years ago, we pulled our membership out. Since that time, they did get a new executive director who has really worked hard to turn that program around, and a lot of those city and county governments are looking at coming back. So any questions or comments or any direction you'd like to give us, we're happy to receive.
Well, Foster, I used to work there, and all of the programs that they really do is for like rural areas. And I know that we would like to consider being a partner with them, but pretty much everything that they do, we do on a large scale. And they normally serve cities. I don't know the population of Trenton or Pollocksville, but those are normally the areas that they serve. And I don't know what the board knows about what they do and the services that they render. They've done some things for us before. I can't remember what they were right now.
They manage the grant for the Volt Center, the EDA grant. They manage that for us, if I'm not mistaken.
They've done a few master plans and some studies as well, but to Alderman Kinsey's point, he is correct. We have our own planning and zoning. We have staff that do grants in-house, and so they are geared to help those smaller local governments and some county governments that don't necessarily have that capacity to do so. They also offer a variety of programs and things like that. So it's really whatever the board would like us to look at on that.
So I think what the question has been to you from their director, probably they want us to join again as a member. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I can't say it's a bad thing, you know, but that's up to the rest of the board members to chime in to make that good decision.
Anybody have questions about that?
Well, what's your opinion? I mean, is it worth the dues to be a member? Do you see a lot of benefit out of it?
I think there could be some benefit out of it. Would we take advantage of some of the things like planning? No, we obviously wouldn't. But they've been Johnny on the spot with some trainings. I mean, they've offered to provide a variety of trainings at no cost to city staff, and that's where I think we could get a benefit from. And also with working with other local governments in the area, because they are trying to corral the county and city governments together and have regular meetings with those. And I've been invited to all of those meetings while not being a member as well, just for input.
Yeah, they've reached out with the new executive director and offered, I think it was the ethics training that they hosted a session here that I think we had already paid for it to be done remotely or whatever, but they've definitely been very outgoing, trying to do everything they can to help us. You know, it's $8,000. I don't want to dismiss it because $8,000 is $8,000, but you know, we haven't been doing that for the past 2 or 3 years, and so we've essentially saved that. So we could give it a try, and I believe if we do, we would get a seat on their board. So we need to, if we decide to go forward, somebody on the board would need to represent us on that one.
Well, I'll make the motion that we would, become a partner with them to see, because they do have some things that they can offer us in helping us out, so why not be friendly?
Now, what board again is this?
District Council, I mean, the call.
The college?
No, the call.
Eastern Carolina
East Carolina Council.
Oh, okay, East Carolina Council of Governments. But we haven't received any service or any help from them in the last 2 or 3 years, you say, Mayor?
We have not been a member of the last.
Right.
We haven't been a member. We had talked about pulling out from that membership, but they were managing our grant for the Volt Center, and I think they did a pretty good job at doing that. So we didn't pull out until, they had a lot of issues internally, so that's when we finally made a decision to pull out. I think they all have that straightened out.
They do, they straighten it.
I think it's a good idea then, and we'll let Johnny Ray serve on it.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
You don't have to make a motion. We're including that as part of the
Okay.
budget. So unless you're just giving us direction that you want to take it out, then.
Is anybody opposed to rejoining the COP?
No.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so we completed the PEG channel yesterday, and so we're now starting with information technology. And so if you turn to page 50 in the front of your book.
Foster, one thing, Alderman Kinsey stepped out yesterday. He wanted to discuss the salary. I know that the clerk shared with us the governing board salaries yesterday, but I want to provide him the opportunity if he had any input.
Brenda, would you like to share again what those rates were?
Sure, and I did use the word salary yesterday, but I think more appropriately, it's compensation. Unless you feel otherwise. The mayor's annual compensation is $16,143.10. Mayor pro tem, which is a different person each year, is $11,975.88, and alderman, $11,098.88.
Is there a page that's on?
No.
No, it's not. Well, the board haven't had a raise in over 20 years, and I've been on the board for 15 years. I like to see the salary go up to whatever the county is making, because we look at pretty much what, we kind of adopt some of the things that they do. That's just my thought there. Everything else is getting all these big raises, and why can't we? I think we work just as hard as anyone else in making decisions.
So, you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Brenda, to my knowledge, within that $11,098, that's also our travel pays in it as well, right? For
That's
gas.
all
Gas.
compensation.
Okay.
That's your time, coming to board meetings, your travel back and forth, coming to board
I'm
meetings.
talking about for its gas and all of that. Because one time it was separated, at one point in time, the salary was separated from the mileage, gas, or whatever you want to call it.
That's correct. This
Okay.
encompasses
Okay.
any type of travel during the month, other than travel and training outside of town.
Okay, right, and then we got funding for that. Yeah, well, I didn't even ascertain, bringing this up, because I know before, I brought it up before the prior board, and, they just knocked it down, and, they act like that we don't do a job. We aldermen, we do a job for our citizens. We work for our citizens. We're out in the field. We're out in meetings. We're here. We're there. We do a lot of work. And I feel like Alderman Kinsey here, some boost. The economy, everybody. We got price increases and everything. You look around, gas, grocery, bills, everything. So, And the way the economy is right now, any incentive to increase our salary would be great.
What is the county?
I don't know. I've just.
Do you have it, Foster?
We're trying to get that right now.
It's
It's
a lot.
$20,000.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, once
they
we
gotta
get
do
it,
it.
wherever we are in this conversation, once I get it, I'll bring it up to you.
Okay. Okay, well, we want to park that one until he gets that information and we can revisit it. I think we're on technology, is that correct?
Page 50. So technology, the information technology is really starting, that department is really starting to come to the forefront of the operations of the entire city. Is we're seeing technology improvements and relying on a lot of the programs and using computers and things like that, as well as our phone systems. It's an extremely important department because it serves all the other departments within the city. And I think one of their biggest goals is to maintain our cybersecurity and make sure that our infrastructure stays updated, to make sure that all of our employees are able to do the good work of the city. So on page 52, capital expense, there's a $375,000 item in there for virtual system hosting infrastructure technical refresh. And basically, the hosting platforms that we are using are outdated and are no longer supported by the manufacturer. And this is unfortunately one of those things that we have to do in order to continue to maintain our systems.
Yeah, Foster,
Yes, sir.
I lost my train of thought. This system is, I was thinking about something, then you said that, then I lost my train of thought. What type of system is this again, please?
This is a virtual server infrastructure. So what we have been going to is, instead of having our servers at a lot of locations, the technology is trending toward the cloud-based type thing. And so
Okay.
this is just going to work with all that and make sure everything works together so that all of our employees are able to access the data that's stored and things like that.
So everything, what is the maintenance on something like this? Is it one or it's not?
So our interim IT director, Lee Jones, is here, and Lee, you may be able to answer that question. Come on up.
Yes, sir. What was the question again? Could you repeat?
Will it be any type of maintenance? It's just like over the years, we used to buy these type of servers for the police department, and they only last for so long, and then you have to come right back and update it again with a large amount of money. So what is the cost to something like this? Is it a large cost, small cost? Where would that put us?
Yeah, the system is good for like 5 to 6 years. There is yearly maintenance, but that large cost is a one-time cost every 5 to 7 years.
So what are we looking at cost-wise and maintenance-wise?
So this allocation is $375,000. And just like what we talked about yesterday when we came to the computer replacements for the governing board, right now we're getting 5 years out of things. And that's when we're traditionally using Dell computers, and for whatever models of computers that we're getting, that's when the manufacturer no longer wants to support and provide updates and things like that with that type of system. Same thing with these servers that we're, even with what we're requesting for the virtual server. 5 years from now, there's probably going to be something else that's going to have to take its place. It's going to be a constant thing as we move forward.
Right. Okay, well, thank you.
So the overall budget for information technology on page 53, $2,336,945. Some of the items in here, page 54, that may highlight you, is there's a 78.9% increase for communications services. What that is, the internet connectivity, security monitoring software, redundancy connections to the internet. So we don't have just one connection to the internet. If something goes down, we like to have multiple. That way, we're not down when we're trying to get the work done.
Foster, I'm gonna show my ignorance here for a minute. The city and the county has our own fiber network, correct?
That's correct.
So when we talk about communication services and internet, what is that? Because I thought we had our own fiber, so are we having to pay someone to host to provide us internet service, or?
We do, so the fiber is getting that signal from one location to the other.
Okay.
That's what that is, but Lee may be able to add a little more.
So the fiber connects all of our buildings. We have, 26 buildings in the city that are connected to the fiber network, and that provides all the connectivity between those buildings. These services give us connection to the internet, to the actual internet services that we consume.
And is that like,
Which is a separate fee to,
is it Optimum or is it Metronet or?
no, do you have that?
We have MCNC as one provider.
Okay.
They support a lot of governments, provide services for a lot of government organizations. And then the other one is through, top of my head, I can't think of the name of the company. It's the company that, when I say, they were named Clarity. They changed their name. They're a backup provider.
So do we occasionally shop this like consumers shop internet providers? Because, you know, when I canceled my previous supplier, they gave me all kinds of things to try to get me to stay. Have we looked at this recently?
Yeah, we look at it whenever we have a renewal cycle. We usually sign a 3-year contract, and we look at different providers. MCNC usually provides us with a pretty strong competitive rate. And we're also looking this year at satellite-based connectivity to provide resiliency during storms or whatever. I know during Florence we lost connectivity to the internet for some time. If we can get satellite-based connectivity, that would of course help with that.
And then my last question is the telephone service. We're paying about $138,000 more now than we were a year or two ago. Didn't we just do a voice over IP new phone system?
We did, and there was some increased cost with putting that new system in place.
How does it work compared to the old system?
So far, I would say it's working better. We've definitely gained some efficiencies, some new technology.
Okay. That's a lot of money for telephone service for people that don't use a lot of telephones anymore, but you would think that telephone service would be coming down these days because everything's done electronically. But. Okay. Board have questions?
Does this include all the call centers when we talk about the IT, or is that a separate budget as far as emergency management? Is all of that included in this, or that's separate?
So if you're talking about when someone calls 911, that is separate. That's under the police budget.
Okay.
When we're talking about communications and general fund, that is, well, and to an extent, I believe, the utilities as well, the enterprise funds as well. That's if someone's calling into City Hall or Parks and Recreation or Public Works, and the interconnectivity of those phone systems and the messaging.
Are we expecting it annually to be almost $200,000 for telephone service going forward?
Yes, sir. It should be relatively in line with what we have this year.
Okay.
So it's no way that we look at another direction. It's no way.
Well, we just replaced this system actually this past, we're still finishing the project to replace it right now. So.
Wow. And this is gonna go on for how long again?
Forever.
Forever.
You gotta have your communications.
It's the cost of doing business
Yeah,
on a
it's just-
scale that we're in, you know,
it's
if
Inflation.
we're not at the point, you know, it'd be nice if you could have a single line from the local provider, but that's not how it works in this type of operation that we have. If it was, then it would be obviously a lot less. This is a complicated enterprise that the city operates.
Okay, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Another item you may see on page 54, miscellaneous other services, $10,000. That includes archiving social media. There's a cost. We have to keep all that information backed up with all the city's social media that goes on. You'll also see some increases in some service and maintenance contracts, and that's due to inflation. The vendors increasing their annual rates. On page 55, you'll see an item under IT supplies, 245% increase, it's $19,000, and that's power supply updates for some of our servers that are located on the 3rd floor here at City Hall, basically UPS. Unfortunately, can't get one of these from the Target or Staples or anything. It's got to be something that provides the clean power to the systems and protects them in case there's any type of power issue. Any questions on IT?
Did GIS move to another spot, or is that?
GIS is going to be moving to development services. We did look and see, we put that with IT, and the assistant city manager deals with that department, and he's not here during this, but the big thing that they saw was that it would really work better for GIS to be with development services. They do more work with development services than any other department, so it just makes sense for it to be there.
So I'm just asking, so we'll go over that budget in development services?
That's correct.
That's why it's zero.
Yes, that's why everything is basically zeroed out.
It used to be there.
Yes.
It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
it was, and at the time, we had GIS and IT wanted to look at merging, and so staff thought that would be a good idea. It would end up not being a great idea, so moving it back to where it needs to be. IT is big enough to where it's a standalone thing, and that's where their focus needs to be. All right, page 58, we're going to finance now, and Kim will cover that.
Good afternoon. So, page 60 starts our accounting budget. And, I'm gonna highlight that, the 76% increase, along with right above that, the 18% decrease, so, under professional services. Those, we just realigned a few things, to put the ones that were in accounting professional services into the other professional services so that they were accounted for correctly. And I'll give you a list of what that includes. So, we have the debt book contract, which, is a helps us with one of our requirements, our GASB, I think 86. And that's $9,750. We have our Clockwise annual contract, which is for our timekeeping, and that's $21,000. We have the actuarial services for OPEB, which is something that needs to be calculated by an actuarial calculation, and that is $7,500, and it's for year end. You'll see that that's what they reference in the audit when they do their audit presentation. We do have the LGC application fees of $3,000. We have the GFOA PAFR application was $350. The distinguished budget application was $450. And our submission for our audit is $550. We have an annual payroll tax update to Munis for $1,100. We have arbitrage set aside for $10,000 and miscellaneous services for $2,000. And that totals to $55,700. We have some decreases on page 61, just showing, aligning more with where we are in this current year. So there are some decreases in those budgets. We are fully staffed, so we have a decrease in temporary help services. And again, that miscellaneous other services, really, it was the putting the contracts and other professional services where they belong. So that's why you see that decrease. We were just getting things aligned properly. We have on page 62, uniforms. I know it says 500%. That's because they used to do the shirts and code them under supplies. We have a uniform account, so we added that uniform account this year for finance. That's why you don't see the history.
Kim, what's our, Alderman Best might be able to answer this. What's our agreement with the county? I see that it's going up. Is it a percentage based off of the valuation that we pay the county?
Yes, yes.
You can't-
Is there a cap to that? I mean, the valuation went up 42% and it didn't go up, but,
That's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
It's actually just a percentage on the collection.
okay,
So if that goes up, then
okay. Thank you. Alderman Kim?
What about the travel and training?
sure.
What has it been for the last 3 years? I'm just curious.
Sure, let me pull that up.
Are you talking about citywide or department?
I'm just looking on the finance right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
It's got like 15, 22, then on
We
down,
have-
24, went on up to 24, then, I guess, I don't
What page you on, Johnny?
know. 61.
So I'm gonna pull that up. I do also want to remind you that we have, 5 new staff. So with that comes training too.
Mhm.
Okay.
It looked like the numbers changed a little bit. That's why I was wondering, what was it like for the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Do you have those numbers?
Yep,
available?
I'm actually pulling those up right now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'm just curious.
Twenty-two was 15.
Okay. So in 2022, we had a budget of 16,887, and we spent 15,229. In 2021, there's a lot that was online, and we spent $9,720. We had a budget of 16,987. And,
Lord, while you're looking that up, there's a lot of this training, mandatory training, required for certifications.
for certifications, yes, yes. And once they get their certifications, then it's just maintaining, it's just maintaining. So some of them will still be required just to maintain their certifications.
I don't know what I was thinking when I called your name, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I didn't hear that, so.
I called you Lori.
Oh. And then we also have a couple national conferences in there too.
Okay.
Or not national, I'm sorry, their state conferences, but for a national organization. And then in 2018, I think it's 19, was $11,290 was spent. And 2018 was $12,005. So
So it is jumped then.
they did, but we have 5 new staff that need their certification and training, and it's in person. So that's, and if you want to look at I can go through the detail if you like for us.
No, I was just curious about the number jumping, that was it.
We try our best to do the ones that we can online to reduce the travel.
So how much do you normally do online?
Well, it's hard to answer that because some of the conferences this year, we realized that they weren't allowing us to do them online, that you have to do them in person. So I could look and get back with you on that if you'd like. But if it allows us to do it online, we do,
Okay.
typically.
And so, Alderman Kinsey, as you know, 2020, 2021, and at least part of 22, the majority of training that occurred nationwide was remotely through Zoom and things like
Right.
that. So really, last year, we started seeing a lot of in-person training again, and this year, I think pretty much everything is just about back to normal now. So in FY 20 and 21, that training was pretty flat. The last 2 years, citywide training has been pretty much in line with year to year. I think this year, overall citywide, there was like a $6,000 increase in our training budget. There has been significant turnover in several staffs where they needed to have certain specific training. One of the divisions that we always see turnover in is our telecommunicators in 911. It's always difficult to keep staff in those positions, and so we talked a little bit about that yesterday when Alderman Astor asked that question. But we see that in certain departments with things. We have to constantly do that updated training on.
Okay, just trying to stay on point, let everybody know everything is going up around everybody but the board.
So on page 62, are you guys ready to move forward? I'm sorry. Okay, on page 62, we talked about the uniforms. We talked about, the janitorial supplies did go up. That's just aligning it with this current year's anticipated expenses, and we're already over $1,000. The community engagement consists of $100 for New Bern 101 expenses. We have increased fuel charges, of course, and then the IT restricted, I'll just jump down to that line. That is for replacement of computers that are at end of life. And our staff really need theirs replaced because it's running very slow. Do you have any questions on accounting? Okay, so page 63 is the purchasing and warehouse division. I do not see anything that really sticks out unless you have questions on page 63.
Kim, just a question from an allocation standpoint. All of these costs get allocated out correctly? Is that right? So the warehouse is, other than general fund things, so anything that the electric department utilizes through the warehouse, they pay for it, correct?
So for the staffing and the basic budget there, that is through the shared service line.
Okay.
That allocation that you saw yesterday.
But we don't make a line item entry to show that directly in the budget for the warehouse. It just stays in the general fund, is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. So on page 64, again, everything's pretty much staying the same. We had a couple of decreases just because we aren't anticipating certain things. The freight express deliveries, we brought back down. And moving on to page 65, we have a little bit of a reduction in their office supplies and materials as well, and safety supplies.
Kind of a new guy question on 64. Kale Road rent, is that where the warehouse is?
Yes. So warehouse's, overall budget was $438,002. Page 66 is our American Rescue Plan, funds that we used to, for that revenue selection. We deferred it back to the general fund. And we do not have a manager's recommended budget because whatever's not spent will be rolled over in the, budget amendment when we do the rollover POs. So, and at the end of the fiscal year.
Question.
Yes.
Normally, what is the total that we have rolled over after each fiscal year? I'm just curious, I don't know. I'm just asking a question that I'm out there in the woods and lost.
That's okay. Tanya might remember off the top of her head better than I can, but I remember it's quite high this last year because we just had so much on back order. I want to say it was close to $2 million that we rolled over. For general fund, it might have been about $1.5 million. She can pull that up, but
That was rollover from the last year.
Right.
After everything was spent.
Right, so if you're talking about after, these are the POs, so this is basically at the end of the year, when we close out the year, we will set aside the remaining ARPA funds, I'm gonna just use them for example, and it'll be a committed fund balance, okay? And then, next, when we are done closing, we'll actually take those open POs and we'll roll them over, and that'll come from that committed fund balance, and we spend them down, and it just continues to do that until we're done.
Okay.
So our rollover will be much higher this year, but you'll clearly see that a lot of it will be the ARPA funds, those projects.
They come out looking good.
So essentially, we were given about 6.7 million in ARPA, and we've allocated pretty much all of that.
Almost all of that. I
But
think we
we've
have
only-
like 400 and,
Yeah, we've only spent 623. So that means there's a lot of projects in the works that are still ongoing. Are we anticipating that, it's probably a Foster or George question, are we anticipating that most of those are going to be completed this upcoming fiscal year?
They should all be completed by the end of this next fiscal year, yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming that all these breakdowns, so Alderman Royal for Ward 2, there was a significant amount of money for sidewalks. I'm guessing that might be the $500,725 entry that we haven't expended anything yet. And then I'm assuming that things like other equipment, it's probably the speed limit signs and things like that that we've bought and paid for.
so we have this, all categorized for, each, what I'm passing around right now is our list. And this list has an account number associated
Okay.
within the budget. So the, last digit, I believe, is what we selected, no? The first digit of the, last account, the 4-digit account number, that shows you what ward it starts with, or what ward it belongs to.
So I don't see that.
So that's actually mine, the 500,725.
Okay.
That's North Hills.
So I don't see the account number on here, but I guess we could just figure it out by
It's,
looking at the
no,
map.
I can send you one with an account number if you'd like, but this is what we've been giving you,
Okay.
because we didn't,
Yeah, that'd be great if you could.
yeah, that's fine.
That'd be very helpful, I think.
But if,
Thank you.
I'll give you an example on page 66. Well, let's actually move to page 67, and that last one for affordable housing for $547,000. Do you see the, over to the left, the last 5 digits there, it's 39023?
Yep,
So that 3, the first 3 that it starts that represents Ward 3.
okay.
So
Okay,
each
good.
one of these account numbers has a meaning that rolls up to a report. But I can definitely distribute this to you with the account numbers if you'd like.
Yeah, that'll be helpful for
Okay.
sure. Like Foster, we've got the stoplight at the corner of Middle and Broad. That's on here somewhere, right?
That's correct, it is, and after we finish with the budget, we've got ARPA updates, so Mr. Childs will be giving us an update on that project and all the others. as
Okay.
well.
That's it for finance. Do you have any other questions?
No, Kim, thank you for identifying how to read what ward this money's allocated to on the budget line. Thank you.
Well, the detail is within the thing that I just passed around, because of course everything is categorized by object code in here, and so it rolls it up into a description that isn't helpful. But
I have a question. I don't know if it pertains to this. Is there any study or any consideration for all of these intersections that need these four-way stop signs?
We haven't done a citywide study on that. What we have been doing, especially this year, is when we receive complaints, we have done an internal study with Public Works and Police to determine if there's a need for that. But citywide, we have not done that yet. We haven't seen a lot of issues there. I think there have been at least three intersections we've had to look at so far this year for this.
Specifically Hancock and Pollock.
Well, I don't think that's been one of them that we've received any complaints on.
Except for mine.
Can you put one on Hancock and Pollock because of the railroad?
Well, we'd have to look at that.
Didn't
We'll
we
have to
change
look-
it? It used to be where the stop signs are now. It used to be the opposite way.
Because of the railroad.
Yeah. I think that's probably already
Railroad
been
is
addressed.
once you stop them on the track.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on finance? All right, our next department is Human Resources, and if you turn to page 69, Human Resources does quite a lot. They're responsible for the onboarding and offboarding of all of our employees. They deal with the workers' compensation program. They deal with the classifications and compensation of our employees. They are the recruitment and selection agent for our new employees, benefits administration. They coordinate the health and safety program. They do the OSHA-related training for the city, performance management, record keeping, and employee appreciation. And that's one of the biggest things that we have really implemented in the last year or so with doing our employee appreciation lunches, what the board has generously allocated at Christmas time for a gift to our city employees, and the employees greatly appreciate that. So the proposed budget for human resources for the next fiscal year is $965,461. The HR director did request, and we do recommend adding one position, that's an administrative assistant for that department. They do quite a lot. They do not have enough staff to accomplish all they need to, and basically with municipal HR departments, there is a survey based on how many employees you have that shows how many employees in HR you should have. We are below that, and so she's trying to add one more employee to help ease that workload. So far, I'm seeing the largest increase request is on page 72, community engagement. HR does participate in quite a lot of job fairs. They to try to recruit employees to come into the city. And then there's an increase in IT under restricted use, so it's a replacement of some computers and software in that department. Those are the biggest overall increases over last year that we're seeing. No capital items were requested this year. Any questions in HR? Our next department is police. That's on starts on page 74 with the highlights and the goals and objectives. And Chief is here, and so he can chime in as needed. But police have 3 different divisions: operations, services, and investigations. They perform a variety of community outreach for our citizens. We have requested a few items, but the one thing that we're recommending for capital is to replace 10 police cruisers at a cost of $621,520.
Just some kind of questions on that. So we replaced, or at least it was in the budget to replace 10 last year. Is this like, I mean, I'm not sure how many vehicles we have. Is that over a 5-year plan or 10-year plan, or?
Our long-term strategy is to try to maintain our fleet in a readiness capacity. We believe that 10 cars per year can keep us close to where we need to be in order to maintain that fleet readiness. We utilize the city garage's metrics to determine the status of our vehicles. We certainly could use more, but we can live with 10. And I will say that's 10 each year, and to be quite candid with you, next year I'm likely going to be asking for more than 10. Likely going to be asking for more than 10 next year.
And to be clear, the department did request 15. We've got to look at the overall capital for the entire city. We also did reach out to the garage. The garage maintains all the records on their vehicles. There was an immediate need for 10. With the other 5, we can look at replacing those in previous years. But on average, they do get about 5 years out of life, and it's based on, definitely have to look at the service record if the vehicles have been damaged, how much we're spending on an individual vehicle, and the mileage itself, since those vehicles are usually on for the entire duration of an officer's shift. This is something that we're going to see on a continuous basis, so literally every year we're going to see police cars purchased, and that's just the cost of doing business.
And I know you're hot seating them, so I understand that. Right. So the follow-on question is, how confident you're going to get these vehicles? And let me put that in context, because a couple months ago, I was in the county commissioner meeting, and the sheriff wasn't confident he was going to get vehicles that he purchased because the Dodge Charger line was shutting down.
Last year I was extremely pessimistic that we could obtain the 12 vehicles we were granted last year, 2 of which were minivan type vehicles for our forensic technicians. We were able to successfully purchase all the vehicles that we asked for. I am aware that there are going to be some challenges, but I do believe that we would be able to purchase the 10 that we're requesting, or if approved, I'm pretty certain that we would be able to get those.
And then are these, like the fire truck, you pay up front, or they pay on delivery, or does it vary? I guess?
Well, there are really 2 costs associated with that. There's the cost of the vehicle.
Right.
We pay that right out, just like you would. We don't finance the vehicle. It's paid for. The second part of that is the outfitting of the vehicle, the striping, the equipment added, and those are also paid right up front. So once we take delivery of the vehicle, all the payments are made.
Okay. And then a follow-on question that I kind of mentioned to you, Foster. For capital recovery, you know, when you replaced 12 vehicles last year, assumedly those 12 vehicles were sold off, that money goes back into fund balance?
That's correct.
And, you know, my thought is somehow you know, instead of going and making a conscious decision to reach back into fund balance to make some of these capital outlays, that maybe we ought to track some of our capital recovery in order to automatically put it in as a capital outlay. You know, in this case, it's being very difficult, you know, because we're considering at least raising taxes or something like that, but using money that had already been budgeted in prior years in that capital recovery, not a whole lot of money, but, you know, when it adds up, it's significant. So I don't know how the board feels about that, or if that's something you want to track or can track, or is it worth the time to track? But
We could certainly look into that, and we need the board's direction on that. We can come back at a future meeting to bring something before you, but we can also look, and staff may be able to pull this up while we're here today to give an example on some of that capital recovery from today,
I mean,
or to date this year on what we've received.
I mean, I know it's probably not much. I mean, you know, on average, we spent $45,000 for a cruiser last year, and we probably sold it for 3 to 5. But, you know, when you talk about 10 to 12 vehicles, it starts adding up to a vehicle in and of itself.
Absolutely.
But I don't know.
Right now, our sale of fixed assets revenue for 2023 is $212,000. That's what we received for general fund.
Okay.
So it could have been a fire truck, it could have been a dump truck, I mean, it could have been any vehicle, because it's all general fund.
No, I understand, but I mean, that's $212,000 that I would argue should go back in the capital outlay versus sitting in the general fund as a rainy day.
We don't have a separate capital outlay fund, do we? It comes out of the general fund, right?
No.
Right. But what I'm saying is, we're allocating it in this year's budget,
Mm-hmm.
when they're saying we already have $212,000 in my mind that doesn't need to be in this year's budget because the money came back. It's as a revenue.
But that's offsetting our current year capital right now. I understand what you're saying, you would just set it aside, but I don't think we sell enough. I think if we had a large sale, that would completely make sense, but I don't think we sell enough or get enough revenue from the sale of fixed assets at this point to do that, because we're purchasing capital every year.
Right, I understand.
That is.
But we're getting capital back every year, is my point. I don't know, it's not worth it, I'm not worried about it, but it's just
And I
trying to
didn't say
figure
that.
out the, no, I'm,
We can certainly analyze it.
I think what would be helpful, and I think I requested this previous city manager, I believe, for us to get on a routine basis our gov deal sales or anything that we sell, so the board's aware before we sell something, and then once it's sold, so we can kind of keep track of what that inflow and outflow is. It would be helpful, which what you're saying, when we're looking at this number, there's actually an offset to it. It's just not captured in here.
oh, okay. I mean, I guess I am assuming that it wasn't, so
Yeah.
that's, okay. And, and not to the capital point, but, you know, one of the other things I brought up is the sale of our excess property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where does that go? It goes back into general fund balance, but,
Right.
you know, maybe we ought to track that and use that for some of these projects as well, instead of passing on a bill to this year's budget. I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, what I was saying was, I think we've sold 15, 20 properties this year, and I'm not just talking about the Talbot lot, because I went back to MSD, but the others we sold, they went back into general fund, and I don't know how much that is, no idea, I didn't track it, but
Makes sense.
I think there's some money coming back in that
Mhm.
we aren't paying attention to, and it's going into the general fund, and given that we have a healthy, very healthy fund balance right now, that maybe that's something we ought to look at. Just food for thought.
I'll be happy to give you a report of what we've sold, what the list entails. our sales of
Okay.
fixed assets, okay?
But I guess I didn't realize that these capital outlays you have, the recovery has already been included. That's
Yeah.
what I did not understand.
It's, yeah.
Chief, with the cars that the guys drive home and the ones that you see parked in different locations, the ones that's parked, the maintenance records for those cars, are they low or high? Because you have guys driving cars home.
So I would have to do the research on that to get back with you on the specifics of that, but I will say this. A vehicle that is assigned to a patrol officer as an assigned vehicle is driven far less than the vehicles that are hot-seated, meaning that essentially they're driven 24/7. So our strategy is to have a vehicle assigned to a patrol officer specifically so that the vehicle is only driven so many miles during the work week as opposed to just constantly being driven from one shift to the next. We just don't have enough vehicles to assign to all of our staff, so it's based on seniority. Senior officers do have an assigned vehicle. If they do not live within the ordinance that provides for take-home vehicles, then they have to satellite park it.
Foster, where are we with that? I know that's been a topic when we talked about retention and recruiting. I know that most of the other agencies around us, they offer a car for that individual to keep. The drive home policy was something that we've talked about need to be addressed too. So are we looking at that still?
We still are. That the policy, which is an internal policy, is robust and it covers all of the city departments. And there's some things in there that we've got the garage updating that hadn't actually been put in place from the previous version, so that we're trying to just get all that information and release that at one time. But yes, that is coming out.
So once you get that, the chief would then be able to look at his staff and figure out how many additional cars we need. And the assistant manager, I'll talk about him because he's not here, him and I have a disagreement on the take-home car policy. He believes it should be done within a certain mile radius of the city limits. I kind of disagree with that because, I'm sorry, the county limit, because if you look at all the way down in Harlow, which is in the county, but yet you could be a few miles outside the city limits and you could be in Jones County out our way of town. I think it needs to be looked at differently.
It's a circumference is what we're looking at, and that's in reality based on how this county is laid out. That's the only way we can realistically look at it. And so we've already put on a GIS map where all of the police officers are located to determine how many that are affected by that as well.
Because theoretically, if everybody had their own car to get a hot seat, the replacement schedule would lessen once you make that initial capital investment.
I have a question also. Chief, you said that there was 2 costs associated with the purchase of the cars. One is, one is the purchase and the other is to outfit the car. Outfitting with the stripe and equipment, is that outsourced or is that in-house?
No, that's outsourced.
Okay. Is that when you purchase the car or you have someone specific that just handles all of that?
We have,
I'm trying to think, is it in the city of New Bern or somewhere else?
I'm not exactly certain where all the elements of all the requirements to outfit a vehicle, I don't think they're all in the same exact location. Some of that is done actually at our facility. Striping is done in one location, the installation of the radios are done in another location, the installation of the emergency equipment, the light bars and those types of things. So it does kind of travel around a little bit to get it fully outfitted, ready for service.
Thank you.
So this year, we're recommending a police department budget of $14,284,147. And that includes salaries, service, capital expenditure as well. If you got any certain questions within the budget, please let us know.
Are we budgeting for all of the head count?
We sure are.
Okay.
We started doing that last year.
So just for the new members of the board, typically, let's just say round numbers, the chief would have, 85 positions. Staff would look and say, well, there's always seems to be a 10% vacancy, so we're only going to budget for 85 minus 10%. And I always had a problem with that. I just think it was fairly dishonest, because the board could sit here and look like heroes and say, well, let's budget for 100 instead of 85, and you're not going to fund them. What difference does it make? And we've had to do budget amendments in the past to fix that because of the way we did budget. So I'm glad to know that we fixed that.
Very good.
Any questions on police? So I did get an update on what the Craven County Commissioners are, what their stipend is. Brenda has emailed everyone something that we compiled last May, and we're going to get a hard copy for you before you leave. The chairman's stipend is $15,202.72. Each commissioner's stipend is $13,718.38. The local travel stipend is $550 per month. The county manager just responded to another question I had, and each year that stipend receives a COLA if the county allocates a COLA.
Jeez.
That's $550 a month for travel.
Be cheaper to buy my car. So basically, $20,300 on average is what their commissioner's salary is, including their travel.
Any questions on that?
So what are you looking from the members?
So if the governing board would like us to make any adjustments in the governing board budget, give us a consensus and we're happy to do that.
I do.
Do we need a motion or something?
I think direction will be fine.
I would prefer a motion myself. You want to make a motion on what you want
I'd
to
like
make?
to make a motion that we will be paid the same as the county commissioners.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Is that including travel or not?
So the county commissioners have a separate stipend on there,
Travel.
but there would also need to be discussion on the mayor pro tem, and we want to address that.
Again, does that motion include this travel stipend, or are we just talking about the 13,000? The motion is inclusive of what?
The motion is made for the travel and the salary.
So you're
So
talking
we-
about $20,000 a year?
So you're not talking about for us as aldermen to have a $550 travel, that's what it.
No, not the travel. We take the travel
Okay, you're just
out.
talking about the salary.
The salary, yes.
Okay, so we're still stay, as an alderman, we're staying with our current travel of $250 a month,
Yeah.
okay? So,
That's not what we get, though. We don't get a travel stipend.
I know it's all included in that $11,098.
So we're talking $13,718.38, correct?
Yes.
Alderman Best, is that what your second of the motion?
Brenda, looking at Craven County now, at the bottom at 13,718, is that included at 550?
It does not.
Okay, all right. I got you. Okay, I just want to make sure I was reading this right. Yeah,
So that's an increase from the 11,098 to
The thir-
13,718, correct? Is that what the
Yeah.
motion is?
Yes, ma'am.
and I second it.
So that is for the alderman.
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Royal.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
No.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes,
Alderman Brinson,
No.
Mayor Odom.
No. You're
It's a tie, so it fails.
You're more than welcome when Alderman Priel gets back, if you want to bring this back up. We'll have time, I'm sure, between now and then.
We've got the budget presentation next week. So you can do that at that time.
also, I would think that, you know, I don't think we as an alderman need to surpass the mayor's salary. So, I mean, that should be included for the mayor as well. And, you know. Okay, all right, we'll bring it back up.
Yes, we'll bring it back up.
Okay, page 83, emergency 911 support.
What page was that, sir?
Page 83. Budget for this is $105,358. This is to cover a GIS staff member that deals with the 911, so it's basically their annual salary and fringe benefits. On page 85, parking. We currently have 3 budgeted part-time positions that work in the downtown area for parking control. Based on the information on the chart, in 2022, 1,394 warning tickets were issued, 315 citations were issued, and 1,079 tickets were paid. Recommended budget for parking is $41,910. And again, that covers 3 part-time employees, equipment and supplies.
And this does not show the, how much Swiss Bear pays, right? This,
The MSD.
I mean MSD, yeah, I'm sorry. This is just what we are budgeting for, so there's like a certain amount above that, this MSD money as well, right?
Well, no, that's the total amount of the budget. The MSD funds approximately $34,000 of that sum.
So where is that in here? Where is that shown as a revenue?
The revenue and general fund.
Well, for the parking attendance.
It's in the general fund revenue.
Okay,
Let me find the number.
so this $41,000 is offset by an MSD payment of
$34,000.
$34,000.
And then where does the additional revenue go from the parking tickets?
Parking tickets downtown go into the MSD.
Oh, I thought that had to go to the school board.
So there's no general fund expenditure for parking at all. It's all paid for by MSD.
I can't hear it.
Between, I reckon, parking, they are general fund tickets.
Yeah, so this is their salaries, the revenue for
That difference does come out of the general fund. $34,000 is the only thing that is allocated from the MSD.
All right, so I apologize that Alderman Priel is not here for this discussion, but I don't think that the general fund should be subsidizing this when the profit essentially is going to the MSD. So the MSD needs to pay for all of this expense if they're going to recoup all the profit. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So what do we need to do to, I don't know how that ever got upside down anyway, because I thought all along the MSD was paying for it.
And I will, on page 33, you'll see the transfer from other funds. That's where the revenue's coming in from MSD to the general fund.
What
To
page?
answer your question, page 33.
33, oh,
and
she said.
For the revenue, general fund revenue.
Can you say that again, please?
Sure. Page 33.
Yeah.
If you look at the third one from the bottom, it says transfer from other funds, that 34,000, that is coming in from, that's where it's located. Coming in from MSD.
Does the other board have thoughts on that?
What was the total cost again? Page 86, was it?
41,910.
$41,910.
So an MSD receives all revenue for parking leases, and PD receives all the parking fines. For clarification.
So
So
it's
only
$41,910. MSD pays $34,000. And then MSD collects $30,000 in parking tickets.
I think she just clarified. I think the police department gets some of that revenue.
We're getting clarification for you.
I thought I had to go to the school board.
As if it's, it was something to do with whether it was criminal or civil, and we did the opposite.
60,300.
We,
So MSD collects 60,000, well. Tanya, is there something else with that one?
So it's increased with the anticipated.
Okay, so with, okay, that makes sense. So with the changes with Pollock Street, the revenue increased for theirs, and they have 60,300 that is anticipated to come in for the parking fees in MSD.
And they corrected me to clarify, all parking fines do go to PD, which parking fines are how much?
$25 a ticket.
Annually, how much, what's the
Right here,
annual?
35.
So $30,000. So if you look on page 86, on the line item, under parking fines, revenue.
so is the $30,000 the police department collects showed as a revenue in the
That's
budget?
correct, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Apologize
on
for
page
that.
86, yep.
Okay, well,
Okay. Well,
that means MSD is subsidizing some police department, right?
So let me get this straight. So the MSD pays $34,000 towards our parking attendants. The parking tickets go to the police department for the same reason, essentially. But the revenue that we get for parking leases goes to the MSD as well?
That's correct.
And what is that amount?
Why is that?
It's anticipated $60,000 because it's within the municipal service district. And
Well, they probably spent, they
Probably
probably bought the
bought
lot
lots.
too.
Okay, I mean, that's.
Is that the case, Foster? Did the MSD pay for most of those lots?
without getting verification, looking into the history, most likely so.
Okay.
Okay.
So the only lots that we charge for are on the MSD, because we have other lots, but they're not in the MSD.
That's correct.
So
we've got the kiosk parking that's getting ready to start across the street from us. We've got the Craven lot beside Morgan's Restaurant, and then we've got the Hancock lot, which is basically behind the Chelsea that we're charging.
So we probably need to start thinking about the kiosk and the cost and revenue and where all that goes whenever we pull the trigger on that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Page 87, fire rescue. New Bern Fire Rescue currently has 3 stations. One's located on Broad Street, one Thurman Road, and one right off of Glen Burning. As we see West New Bern continue to grow and expand, there are plans in the future for a department to go up there. In this current year's budget, we had some funds to work on a concept plan for a new fire department. We don't have that back yet, but I believe we'll be getting that over the next few months to look at for future.
Foster, did you find out what year, I'm sure the chief knows, that what year this,
2002.
2002, the one that we're going to refurbish for $350?
That's correct, 2002 for that fire truck. So the capital that we're recommending are to replace 2 motors on the 2006 fire rescue boat, $800,000 to replace a 2006 pumper, $350,000 to replace the existing reserve fire engine, and $50,000 to repair and paint refurbishment body of a fire engine. Total capital, $1.2 million.
All right, let's talk about this refurbished job that we're doing. We got a 21, 22-year-old fire truck, be 23 years old before they get it refurbished. I mean, is it worth us spending $350,000 and refurbing it? Or are we better off purchasing a brand new truck? Now, you're gonna spend over a third of the cost of it to refurbish it, and who knows how many years you'll get out of it. The engines, you're not putting a new engine in it, is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
You're not putting a new pump in it, is that correct?
It's a rebuilt pump. They're going to be rebuilding the pump.
What about the drivetrain and stuff? Is it,
The motor, drivetrain, and chassis are the same truck. Everything else gets refurbished.
so,
Let me tell you a little history of how this came about. Originally, truck was taken out of service and put into reserve status. Changes that occurred out to the Thurman Road Fire Station area with the growth dictated the need for a ladder service truck. So the Quint that we had out there became our ladder service truck, and we ended up putting that truck in service as the first due. So now we run 2 apparatus out of that station. And because of that, we're running a 2002 as the first out. And one of the issues that the industry is finding on new apparatus is, I mean, I've got $800,000 in the budget, but by the time this is all said and done, it could be $900,000. I don't know. That's how crazy it is. A 2 to 4 year window of even getting a rig here. And what I'm seeing in the industry a little bit is they are getting, used to be a refurb was not a thing, because exactly what Chief Astor was saying. Alderman Astor, excuse me. And used to be my boss for a long time. So you're finding a lot of the industry are going down this direction. Yes, you are taking a gamble, you are taking a 2002 drivetrain engine and taking a risk on it. But and the $350,000 is probably a little bit of an inflated cost, because again, we were trying to figure out where this ball landed by the time budget comes about. So, and typically on a refurb, we're talking about a window of 8 to 12 months compared to 2 to 4 years. If trying to be a good steward here, but I do agree with Alderman Astor. It is a fine line there, and do we want to spend $900,000 on a new truck? It's going to take us 2 to 4 years to get here. Ultimately, if I had a checkbook that I could pull out, pay, Bobby would pay for it, that would be my suggestion.
How many hours does this truck have on? Do you have any idea?
I'd be guessing to tell you. I mean, it's got a little less than 100,000 miles on it, I do know that, but I would guess probably somewhere around 8,000.
Oh, well, 100,000 miles on a fire truck's a lot of miles.
Yeah, it is.
And 8,000 hours?
Probably very close to that, yes.
Chief, I think I remember when we had this discussion about the new apartments that's going up in Craven 30 or West New Bern, the need then to have a ladder because of the multiple heights. There's a lot of apartments that's going up in Carolina Colors. Is there a need to have a different type apparatus
No.
at Thurman Road?
The quint that we have out there will suffice for it, and that's the reason I chose to do that, for that exact reason, because I saw the writing on the wall, saw the growth out there, and trying to be ahead of what DOI, I didn't want them to come in, they can pop in tomorrow and do an inspection on us. So I'm trying to be a little bit proactive and go ahead and changing that truck to be a 100% truck.
And is that the one that's give us a lot?
And that's, unfortunately, that's the one we're gonna be replacing, so we're gonna probably have to look at the other quint that we have now and move it out there.
And is
But,
Quint,
but, I mean, this is an evolving, everyday thing, because the other side of the coin with the West New Bern area, it's not going, we did some statistics the other day, and it's not going to be long before that area of the town is going to be requiring a truck company also, because of that same growth.
so is a Quint, you had to remind me, is a Quint a brand or is that the type of truck?
Think about, a quint is a kind of a in-between. It can be graded either way. It can be graded as an engine company, if that's what you need.
Right.
And that's what we have on, the one that's Elizabeth right now, we graded it out as a.
But a
engine
Quint
company.
is a
It's a ladder.
pumper and a ladder together.
That's right.
My question is Quint the actual brand of the truck?
No, that's what a quint
Okay.
is. It's a brand, it's a taking of an engine and a ladder and putting them into one.
So the reason I was asking that is if we're gonna get a new one, do we need to get a different brand than the last one we got since it's had so much trouble?
But let me correct you on that first.
Okay.
The trouble is not due to the brand, but we are looking at other brands.
Okay.
The tie that we had before with Sutphen is no longer there. We had a really good tie where we had all these trucks. We could call the president of the company if we had an issue. That tie is kind of lost. So I've already told the spec crew, we're going to open up to everything.
Okay.
But that particular truck was the one that was flooded. That's why we're having so much problem. We spent probably close to $100,000, which the insurance paid for after the flooding. And we have probably spent close to that on that truck since. We just recently spent, back, it was out of service 3 or 4 months, about $45,000, and it's back in the shop again this week.
So I guess if we refurb it, that's gonna be paid for.
That's not the one we're gonna refurb.
Well, the other one that we're gonna
That's
refurb.
correct.
If we refurb it, it's gonna be paid for in this upcoming budget that we're working on right now.
Yes, sir.
If you order a new one, it's gonna be paid for in probably 2 budget cycles from now. Is that fair?
That's fair to say, yes, sir.
But you still have to encumber it, correct? As soon as you order it, you have to encumber the funds?
I was under the impression we had to pay for it at time of order.
Yeah,
There's 2 sides to that. You can, or you don't have to, but you typically get quite a bit of a discount. If you remember when we bought the tower and the engine passed, we did that because we got almost $200,000 off of the cost.
but some, now because of the shortage, a lot of, our capital has had to either, like large capital like that, we've either had to pay like 50% or pay it up front.
What's the cost of a new truck?
Right now, it's $800,000 now
For an engine?
for an engine. Quint's about $1.2 million now.
All the best.
When you say engine, $800,000 for an engine, that's just without the ladder?
Well, it's got ladders, but it's not got the extended ladder that you see raised up in the air and move around.
Okay. And so that would be the in-between size truck?
That's the Quint that you see. Like, when you go by Elizabeth Avenue, the truck you see with the ladder that can raise up off the back, that's the Quint.
Okay.
The one that you see at our headquarters station that has a bucket off
Okay.
the back of it, that's our tower.
So that's the top? line.
That's correct. Tower's the tallest one. That's correct.
Okay.
75 foot with the quint typically.
Barbara, an engine is just a pumper.
That's it.
Okay.
It's referred to just as a pumper.
So with the one you're wanting to refurbish here, that is going to be located at where?
Right now, it's at Thurman Road Fire Station.
So that'll be going back to Thurman?
Yes, ma'am. Well, it's at Thurman now. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So my only concern here is that with the West New Bern, where does the fire truck play in at that? I know they come from Elizabeth Avenue, but we done discussed this over and over again. You have, Chief, with us about the time frame of getting to these locations because it's coming from Elizabeth Avenue. So when is it gonna come in play for a new engine to?
You can do it one or two different ways, Alderman Best. You can say, all right, because it's about the same time frame. You
Okay.
say, we're building the fire station, we're gonna order a truck. Or you can take one of the refurbs and move it out there and then move one of the reserves into a lower running fire station. But typically, what I would suggest doing, and my recommendation is the day that we say, yes, we're ready to build this fire station, let's go ahead and order a truck, because the time frame is gonna be about the same time frame, 2 to 4 years, probably 2 to 3 years.
So the one you want to refurb, if we build a new fire station, if you replace that, could that be used at the new fire station, if it was a new one?
That was my original intent there, but now with the growth that's occurred out there, I no longer have that opportunity. I still have my reserves, but I've got a reserve in service today at Elizabeth Avenue Fire Station. That was my original, when I put it in the capital plan last year, and this year, that was my original intent, but things have kind of changed and morphed into what the need of it being a first out.
So when is it, I mean, what's the delay on, I know the last thing that was, we talked about for as a fire station on the west end was acquisition of property from Weyerhaeuser. Has that been resolved? I mean, wasn't that, we have to get.
Yes, ma'am. We've actually, as the manager was saying, we're in the final stages of the conceptual drawing.
Okay.
We're working with that. We've been meeting with that, and we're really close to that. And George's been handling a lot of that for me because it ties in with the infrastructure, the water tank that needs to be going on the same property.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And so last I heard, they're getting really close. They're ready to start making some moves and some of this stuff. So yeah, I think you'll see that exchange of the property being put into our name or moved into our possession here shortly. I actually walked it the other day with the architect, and it's a nice piece of property.
Okay. So then it's left up to this board for us to say, yes, go ahead and let's build a fire station out there. So,
Not at this time, but when that time comes, we have all the information, we'll be coming to.
right, I'm just saying it's up to this board, but so what time factor are you speaking of, Mr. Hughes?
We'll probably be discussing this within the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which will be in next year's budget.
Well, no, I think for this, it would be,
I don't think that's happening.
yeah, it would not be included in the budget. It would be, if it is, it would be an amendment at that time. And we would, of course, if we build something, it would go the loan process, similar to what we're doing with the Stanley Recreation Center.
So it'll be, so really, when you're talking about, you're looking at years here, 2 to 5 years before we get a new fire station on that west end?
43 connector's not scheduled to be done until, what, 25? That's right.
Okay.
So a lot of that could be coming into play all at about the same time.
Put a year and a half, 2 year construction time, or one
Depending on
year?
the size, depending on the size of the building, yes.
It won't take a year and a half to build it.
Well, depending on the size.
Yeah, because it's basically metal frame buildings, isn't it? Okay.
Well, as far as, I've always been supportive of investing in capital equipment because it's a one-time thing, and we've talked about the aging fleet for years. Personally, even if it's not 350, if it's 300,000, you're putting $300,000 in a 20-year-old plus piece of equipment that you have no unknowns about. I think the only advantage, it sounds like, is the speed. You get this one refurb back in use in 12 months, and it's going to be 2 years before you get a new one. But my vote would be for a new one and not spend $300,000 on an old one.
And again, Mayor, I appreciate that. I think the steward side of me was trying to look at time-wise and everything, but I appreciate that support.
So Chief, I mean, really, you're the expert on this, as far as I'm concerned. Why did you come about with wanting to refurbish
I'm
them?
sorry, may I close the door?
Yes.
He was trying to save
I
money.
thought, all I could hear was that machine running out there.
So you wanted to refurbish this engine. So what made you decide to do that instead of recommending buying a new truck? Because you felt like.
Like I was explaining to the mayor, the factors that on the side of me was cost and time frame.
Okay,
And like I said, if I had an open checkbook, my recommendation would be buy a new truck.
okay.
But, you know, I'm trying to look at the big picture of things, and it is where the industry's going. But you are taking a gamble. And you can blow the engine and then spend $50,000 on putting a new engine in.
Well, yes. So you're looking at $450,000 more to buy a new engine.
You're looking at about, like I said, about $800,000 right now. And that would change.
Only thing I'm concerned with here is as long as we have an engine that is gonna be in service, it's gonna be ready when we have calls out on the west end of New Bern, that we gotta service those citizens out there. And I know we've been talking about this fire station and all of this, and I think it's time for us to, to just quit kicking the can down the road and do something with this fire station out there, because when you come before us before and gave us your presentation and you recommended the growth out there on the west end and the service time it takes for that engine to get there. Suppose you have two different fires that come in two different locations out there at the same time, and that can happen. I'm just.
It's happening more and more every week.
I know,
Two fires at
exactly.
the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've been talking about building a fire station out that way since the unfortunate day that they were doing a tour of the
Warehouse
water
plant.
plant.
Water treatment plant.
Water treatment
Yes.
plant.
Yes.
And we had an employee to have a heart attack and
Yes.
die on the floor because it was taking 20 minutes for a rescue vehicle to get there. And from that day forward, we've talked about, we have to build a fire station out there. We have to build a fire station out there, and that's the only thing we do is talk about it.
Even talked about a temporary fire station out there
Yeah.
with the water treatment plant. And, and the chief stands up here and gives us these recommendations and tells us what we need for our citizens, and then we just overlook it and move on to something else. And me personally, I think that, and I know it's a time factor, sir, you got to get everything in line, you got to get the land, you got to get everything worked out for us building this fire station on property. But I see you can take $350,000, refurbish this engine, take some other monies and move it somewhere so we can move on with building this fire station. Down next year budget, buy a new truck. $350,000 to me as opposed to $800,000 for a new truck, and then you got to turn around and you got to spend money to build a fire station.
Well,
We need to do something in this, like you said, keep on talking about it and talking about it. And we got citizens, and their area is growing.
Alderman Kinsey?
Chief, have you considered speaking with Ebby about that little satellite building that he has out there in that area? I don't know, I'm just
We
asking.
looked at that's West New Bern's fire station.
Oh, okay.
And number one, it's not large enough for us, because not only, there's no facilities, there's no place to sleep, no place to
Yeah.
have showers, kitchen, and things like that. And location-wise, it's a whole lot better to be out there. If we were going to do something temporary, somewhere out around the water treatment plant would be the better place to put it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know, I've seen that building, but I never actually visited.
Number one, we'd have to share it with them, and it's just not large. Even the lot, I mean, it's only like 10 foot on either side of the building.
Wow.
So it's really not large enough to do what we
Okay.
need to do.
So what are we gonna do about this fire truck?
So Chief, you think how many, you know, you said it had almost 100,000 miles on it? And then you, of course, with the hours,
Yes, ma'am.
you think it's feasible to refurbish this truck and use it until,
The truck's usable right now.
Okay.
All the best. It's not like it's out of service.
oh,
We're trying to get it
okay, I
back
was
in
thinking it was,
service.
oh, okay.
It's being utilized now. I'm trying to extend the use of that, is what I
Okay.
was trying to do.
Okay.
Give us another 10 years for that apparatus, is what I
Okay.
was trying to do with the refurb. And like I said, if the first choice would be you put another engine in place. As you see, we're constantly having them down, and we're tipping down 2002, but trying to be a good steward and trying to look at the thing in a time frame of getting something back that we can rely on for the next 10 years was my choice of going with the refurb.
Okay.
What is the cost of the new engine again? I know you said that, but
800,000.
what is it again?
About 800,000 for our engine.
Okay, now, what did you say is 1.2 million?
Queen. And this is how things have gone.
Ladder.
Our tower that we bought 2 years ago now was 1.2 million. It's now 2.4 million. The Quint we bought last time was 700, almost 800,000. It's 1.2 million now. The engine that we just bought was 575,000. Now it's 800,000 plus. So that's how things have changed.
Maybe a good solution to this would be, let's go on bids, see what the thing's gonna cost, see what the delivery date is, and then let's compare the two prices. And see, I mean,
The
I
two
will say
prices of
this, Alderman Astor, if we were to buy two, you're gonna get a better discount, just like we did the last time. So you will get a savings there.
and you already got your capital's including one, right?
That's correct. Or if you approve the one that's in there and then you move the one from being refurbed out, we will be getting a discount.
And would you sell
Well, yes, sir.
the one that you're replacing?
I would not probably sell that one. I would sell the 93 that we've got.
So if you
As a
sold that,
reserve.
you get 10,000? I mean,
I've given up on that, Mayor. I mean, I thought the tower that's still sitting out there, we were gonna get something for it. And matter of fact, I even looked at possibly refurbing that one because everything's so crazy and it's worth more in metal than what we've been offered for. You can take it to scrap yard and get more for it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's just, you don't get a lot for them. And volunteer departments are the ones that utilize that kind of thing, and they don't have the funding most of the time to be able to buy it.
And with the Fire Act grants, they're getting new ones.
That's right. I'd say $5,000 if I was to guess, probably, be a number.
So I guess it kind of begs the question for me. We're talking about a new fire station in West New Bern. What are we needing to purchase to outfit what we should put at West New Bern?
And that's what I was talking about. The apparatus would need to be at the same time.
Right,
If y'all,
but
if you today said, hey, Chief, we're ready to build you a fire station, at that same time, we would go out and buy a fire truck.
Right, well, but I mean, I've heard you say that, but you've only talked about one truck. I assume it's going to be more than one
Right now,
truck.
that's all that's needed. It's gonna be set up for more than that, because eventually, like I was explaining to the mayor, eventually you're gonna have to have a truck company out there also. But that's down the road.
Okay, I guess I made the assumption there was going to be more, but.
And so we don't know what the cost of a building would be since they're doing their concept plan right now. We'll get that soon, but then we've got equipment and supplies that go into the firehouse. Do you have an idea, a ballpark what that could be? Obviously, if we have another fire station, that's gonna be, more employees, so give an idea on how many employees that we'd be looking at that as well.
Yeah, you're looking at probably close to $1 million in personnel costs. It's about 15 people.
Okay. I guess my preference then would be to probably buy a new one. And then we'd have it on hand by about the time we'd be opening up that station.
want no trouble out of y'all now when it comes to talking about building this fire.
Well, you're not gonna get
This
any,
fire station
you-
out there on the west end.
you're not gonna get any trouble out of me, because with the 43 connector, it's gonna be
Tell me
servicing
about
my
it.
side of town.
Tell me about it. That it's gonna be a really dire,
And-
it already
and
is a
Rocky
dire
Road.
need.
And probably Rocky Run too, with,
Well, we had a recommendation to look at the bid or see what the cost is. Is that the route we are taking, or do we need a motion? Where are we?
Unfortunately, I don't know that we can get a good cost until we put together the specs of what we really need. So if we're not talking about tomorrow, getting that, I mean, I can get a ballpark price for you now, but to get a firm price, we would need to sit down and put specs, because we've got to get a bid on those specs.
So that's the direction we need to take?
One other thing to consider, Kim, I assume that we would finance a new truck and we're gonna pay for a refurb. I don't think we would go out and get
Correct.
financing. So if we refurb the truck, we're gonna take money out of this budget and pay for it at one time. If we were to get a new one, then you're gonna finance it and pay for it a little bit over time.
Correct.
To me, that seals the deal, in my opinion. So,
So the refurbished truck will go to Thurman Road, and the new truck would go where? Thurman Road?
No,
Where?
not necessarily.
Okay. How's
What
that?
dictates the newer vehicle, new apparatus is need,
Uh-huh.
requirements, what are we being required to respond to? So we typically look at, headquarters is our number one in response calls. Elizabeth is our number two. Thurman is our number three. So basically, we would start looking at statistics for that station, and that typically gives you where you put your the newest apparatus, where you're running the most cost.
Gotcha, okay. So you're recommending, like you said, if you had,
I will promise you this, Army Best, whatever apparatus is there will be a reliable apparatus that will cover the area like it should.
so what you're recommending, if you had the pocketbook, if you had the checkbook, you would go ahead and refurbish one and buy a new one?
No, ma'am. I tend to agree with the mayor and Alderman Astor on that. The big picture, if I had, again, the open pocketbook, I would say the apparatus, but in the long term, I agree with Alderman Brinson too. I mean, if we're looking at the fire station, yeah, we're gonna know we're gonna need another apparatus. When you look at, I was just thinking about the financing versus the purchase, you know, it makes sense to me to buy two apparatus at this point in time.
I mean,
Two new apparatus.
Yes, ma'am.
to his point, my point was, if you even ordered it today, it would be 2 to 4 years before you got it. So that's, why wait?
So you're looking at $1.6 million.
No, just the one,
Oh, you
the
said two.
800.
You
There's
said
two of them.
I didn't say 2.
Look at your capital. It's $800,000.
He's already gonna get
for
one.
Yeah, $800,000 for one.
And then $350 to refurb one.
So we're
That's
talking
why
about,
we
do that.
we're talking about swapping the 350 to refurb for another $800,000.
Oh, is that what we're talking
That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
That's why I want to get an understanding.
about? Okay, well, I thought we were only buying one. That's why
That's
I
why I
asked.
said two.
That's why I asked how many we needed at West Newbury, and he said one.
Let me help you understand, Alderman Brinson. We've got one at Thurman Road right now that's giving us problems.
Right.
It has to be replaced.
Right, I understood
That's where the
that.
one new one. The refurb will be somewhere else in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put that new one, that one would become a reserve, and the new one would go take that one's place.
All right, Board, we gotta move this thing
How
along.
quickly can you get a bid proposal together?
I'll try my hardest to get it quickly.
I mean, I think we should go on bids for two. We don't have to accept them. We'll see what the prices are, and we'll go from there. In that bid proposal, I would recommend that you get a price for one, and then a second price for two, and see what kind, in case we decide to go with just one. Foster, you okay with that?
I'm fine with that, so I just want to make sure I hear for our budget purposes, we're looking at two new fire engines, and for a placeholder for this budget, $1.6 million for two, or do we want to come back once we get these prices and do a budget amendment in the next year for the second?
I'm good with whatever we, as a board, decide for as these vehicles are concerned, because the chief is telling us we need them, so we need them, we gotta have them. So after we look at what numbers you bring back to us, and move on from there.
So as far as the budget is concerned, why don't you just use the 350 plus the 800 as the placeholders and keep the budget instead of increasing the amount right now, and then we'll just do a budget amendment. Is that okay, Kim?
Yes.
At least I didn't call you Lori.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you,
Okay,
chief.
so the requested and recommended budget for fire rescue for the upcoming year, $9,252,922. Give you a second to look through it, see if you have any general questions on anything with that. I think we've talked at length about the capital, which is the main part of that.
We're now Parks and Rec.
All right, if everyone's ready, Parks and Recreation starts on page 100.
Hold up a second, please. Thought I had marked something here. Okay, never mind. Okay, thank you.
So, on page 99, motor vehicles, 1.2 million for fire. What is that covering?
That was all the capital requested, so that was the $800,000 fire truck, that was $350,000 refurbishment for that fire truck, and $50,000 refurbishment paint job for that was that 1.2 million. Then on the other equipment, that was $60,000 for the road buzzers.
All right, so we're putting it in the budget as a one-time expenditure, but we're gonna finance it. So we're trying to balance this budget, and you all, in just a few minutes, are gonna recommend a tax rate increase to pay for this, when that's really not what we're doing. Is that fair?
So, correct, but we can make an adjustment and do $800,000 in proceeds from borrowing. We can do that as well and add that to revenue.
But we're creating a tax rate with this budget
I'm sorry.
to pay for this.
Yeah, we already have budgeted the $800,000 to borrow. So, or for, the capital that we can borrow, that's budgeted in here already in the revenue.
So in the overall budget, dollars, is the $800,000 in that, or is it sitting somewhere for money that you're gonna borrow?
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not being clear. So we've accounted for borrowing for a loan for that capital, the capital that we can borrow on, it's already, the revenue from borrowing is already budgeted for in here. So
what all in this budget, from a capital standpoint, is being assumed that we're gonna finance? Do
Okay.
you have that?
Yep.
Total budget.
That would probably be helpful.
So if you were to pull out the capital, which is the blue,
The handout at the very
Handout.
front of your book,
Yep.
looks like this.
$7.9, including enterprise fund.
including proceeds with loan purchasing. That column, you'll see the yes and no's. So the ones that we are planning to borrow on are marked yes, and I don't think we have a total on it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
General fund.
Oh, there it is. $2,666,020. It's on page 2.
That is general fund capital. The finances.
Okay. So we've got about 40 minutes left, if we're sticking with 3:30.
Okay, Parks and Recreation, page 102. Parks and Recreation has three divisions: administration, facilities, and parks and grounds. Recommended capital includes $20,000 in security cameras in parks, 2 skid steer attachments, and $150,000 toward a skate park build. We have had conversations with the county about partnering on this skate park, and in our recent conversations with the county, they are still interested in a partnership. So if that occurs, the proposed skate park would be built over at Southwest Parrot Park, which is where West Newbern Recreation Center is located. So in Parks and Recreation Administration, recommended budget is $869,107. Let's see here, some of the increases that we are seeing here. Temporary help services, 400% increase, which is approximately $12,000 on temporary help services to get help for special event activities. Parks and Recreation staff really does a lot of special events, so that means a lot of the full-time staff in Parks and Grounds, as well as involved with event setup, tear down, and things like that. So staff is looking to help alleviate the pressure on staffing and overtime by getting part-time and temporary staff to help with those event setups.
So you're looking for how many people for that?
I'm sorry.
How many employees are you wanting to?
It'll just be temporary staff, so that we're not requesting any for that.
Okay.
Depending on the time of the year and the events that are being held. On page 105, I'm sorry, still on page 104, there's an increase on special recreation activities. This is the line item that we're doing the majority of special events out of, such as summer concert series, movies in the park, any other events and activities that they're holding. They're planning on offering some more. So there's an increase in that.
Are those events well attended?
They are well attended. Yes, they are.
Okay, let me go back to the skate park, if you would, please. $150,000, and the county is interested in partnering, so what would be their part?
$150,000.
Half of that.
No, it's a
$300,000 skate
Oh,
park.
it's a $300,000 project, okay.
For a skate park.
I got a question for you, Foster. Under, I don't know if this is a mistake, if I'm reading something wrong, line item 72-130 under parks. Employee and travel and training.
Yes.
Here you've got $10,850, but on the very front sheet, you got $20,400.
This is for that one division, so we've got to add up the administrative facilities and parks and grounds to get up to that 20,000 you see under parks and recreation.
Okay.
Entire department versus division.
Is it because they're certified? Did they have to attend to some special training or something? $10,000 for.
Several have to maintain their certifications. There's a certified parks and recreation professional certification they have to maintain, and so they have a certain amount of training they have to attend on a yearly basis to maintain that. Also includes some conferences as well as training. Community engagement on page 105, $2,500, that's a new line item, and they do a lot of community engagement, so offset the cost of that.
Concessions and resale for $20,000 credit. We're making, so that's a revenue?
So that is what we use to pay for the goods and services that we resell. Great example, the aquatic center or any events that we sell concessions at, that's where we pull those funds out of to resell.
And where do you show the revenue from that?
That will be actually on three line items under revenues, and there's page 103, so you will see one item under here, and right now, 566% increase of $20,000. That is concessions and resale. You will also see that at facilities as well with the aquatic center, and some other special events. So that's broken out over a few departments.
I'm not getting confused. Is that $20,000 revenue?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Kim, just for making things a little easier for people like me, in next year's budget, can we highlight a revenue or put it in a different color ink?
Not red.
We would have to manually do it, but,
Or either put out beside the description, in parentheses, revenue or something like that.
All the revenues are in parentheses.
they're all in parentheses.
All the revenues
Anything
are
you
in
see in
parentheses.
parentheses on an expense is gonna be a revenue.
Well, why didn't you tell us that to begin with?
Sorry, I'm not the accountant.
So if it's in parentheses, it's a revenue? I never knew that. Nobody ever told me that. Did anybody tell you all that? Yeah. All right, sorry.
So any questions in recreation administration?
So, Foster, Carrie, that department is up to staff for his, employee-wise with all that's going on with the Parks and Recs. I mean, she's fully staffed and got the,
She is not fully staffed. I think she has one or two positions that they have out right now in administration or facilities. And then in Parks and Grounds, they may have one or two positions there as well.
okay, because I know they do a lot within that department
That's
and a
correct.
lot of weekends and
And
after
that-
hours.
That's right, and that's why we're proposing to add that 15,000 in to take some of the heat off that full-time staff.
Yeah. Doesn't Public Work help with any of
Public
it?
Works does help with quite a few folks as well.
Okay.
Foster, just a quick question. This community engagement or these funds for these activities, is that to actual like purchase, like giveaways or branded stuff? This is not, because that's gonna fall under salaries if they're working, right? If they're working an event, they're gonna get paid for it.
That's right. If we have an event, then they're paid for that. So this is basically giveaways, information that we give to the public, yes. So it could be a tent or something like that we're,
If I remember correctly, Jordan had $10,000 in his water fund yesterday for community events. That's a lot of knickknacks and giveaways, right?
yes, it is.
Okay.
For a first time buyer.
Yeah. Food for thought when we give them some direction here.
What page are you on, sir?
Okay, so we've done 60-10. 60-30 is Parks and Grounds. Recommended budget for that is $1,809,333.
What page is that?
106.
106, and if you'll turn to 107, we'll share some few highlights with you. So in the last literally 5 years, we have had, I'm trying to find that line item, under temporary help services, we've had approximately $150,000 under temporary help services. Parks and Grounds, I'm not sure if you all may realize this, but they are responsible for maintaining right-of-ways on MLK. They maintain all the cemeteries, all the parks, all of the city office space. So they do a lot of mowing in town. And so traditionally, we have relied on part-time or temporary workers to fill that bill. Over the last few years, normally, if we are fortunate enough to maintain temp employees through one mowing of one of the cemeteries, we're lucky because once they see how how difficult that work is, they'd rather do something else. So that's been a constant struggle. So this year, we have contracted out a lot of those things to mowing crews. So that's why we have we've basically split that $150,000 that we normally put in temporary help services. $75,000 of that is going to other professional services for contracts to mow those areas, and the other 75 will say with temporary help services to try to at least have 4 or 5 temp workers to help alleviate the pressure that staff receives. That is basically the main highlight on parks and grounds, unless you see anything that stands out to you and you have a question. Page 110 starts the final division, that's Parks and Recreation Facilities. And that is namely the New Bern Aquatic Center, the Pleasant Hill Community Center, West New Bern Recreation Center, and once Stanley White Center is built, it will include Stanley White Recreation Center. Recommended budget for that is $1,016,286. Biggest increase, biggest change we are seeing is on page 113. On 113, there are 2 line items, one that says chemicals and one that says aquatics. And traditionally, that chemical line item has been spent on all things aquatic related, whether it's been chemicals or ring buoys or rescue tubes or umbrellas or chairs for the pool operations. And this year we've created just a new aquatics line item to make it cleaner to where we know specifically where those funds are going. And that amount is $16,000. Any questions in Parks and Recreation? Okay, we're going to go on to Development Services. So we do have a new director in Jessica Rue, and she has been working to reorganize that department to the best it can be. And as we have talked about in Development Services, there is definitely a need to revisit the zoning ordinances, and so we are recommending to reorganize. And one of the things you will see here under page 117 is other professional services, $249,000. That is the estimate that we think it will cost for the project to take all of our codes, rewrite them to be meaningful, realistic for the 2020s, and look at the best practices that other cities are using to implement this. It's going to be a very detailed project, and the Discovery Board will be involved. The Planning Board will be highly involved with this, and so we'll be coming to you, if not on a quarterly basis through this process, possibly a monthly basis to review and visit certain zoning ordinances. But it's very important for us as a city to update our ordinances to improve our services.
Ken, a question with their travel and training. What was it? Could you go back years on that one there to see what it was then and what it is now?
And so while she is doing that, their travel and training has increased. Over the last several years, they've provided minimal training for their building inspectors, and the director has seen a need to improve on that. They to do additional training for the rest of their staff, especially with supervisory training, to help with them as well.
So that's the reason the increase.
That is correct, and that is the single biggest increase by department. The Development Services did not do a lot of overall training. They went to a few of the conferences, but they didn't allow all the employees to get some knowledge. And so we felt it was very important that as many of those employees as possible could take advantage of that, so we could have folks that were on top of their game at that
Okay.
department. But you have that? Okay, go ahead.
He's covered that, Kim, thank you. He's covered it very well.
Oh, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, on page 118, you'll see another highlight, that's service and maintenance contracts. That is $110,400. This is for an upgrade for their software. They use Intergov to stay on top of issues like when they're issuing permitting for building construction and things like that. The upgrade is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it'll also allow them to stay on top of nuisance abatement issues to where they'll have all that information in one database as opposed to having Excel spreadsheets on 3 different computers. And so
I thought they were moving to Munis.
this is a form of Munis, but no, they're not going to be able to move to Munis.
Hold on now. I know we're on a time frame, but why isn't Development Services getting on Munis?
The simple explanation is that there are certain elements of Munis that were promised that Munis was not able to deliver on. And while they may have tried to implement certain things, it has not worked out and has proved to be more difficult.
So who's going back to Munis to negotiate the cost that we paid anticipating that we were going to be on Munis for all departments?
So we have had several discussions with Munis, and I haven't been on the last one. Have you been involved with that?
Not since the payroll.
Okay.
So I'd like somebody to set up a meeting. If 2 other aldermen want to join me, I'd like a meeting with whoever our Munis rep is to have this discussion. Because we were sold a bill of goods and we're not getting it, and I want to know why.
Okay.
Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay. Yeah, that was a gigantic expenditure that the previous board took on.
That's right.
And now we're asking to take on more expense.
The next division on page 120 is inspections. That proposed budget is $335,073. So that travel and training line item has increased based on what I stated earlier. Uniforms has increased as well. While that staff had not really had anything other than a T-shirt, so they wanted to provide some more uniforms to where they were branded, and they're visiting those work sites and things.
Kim, when we see telephone service charges for each department, what is that? Is that like cell phone service for department heads?
Yeah, there's, it's the Verizon, I believe there's also the, is it internet in that one too?
It's Verizon, which covers all the like tablets, internet services for when they're out in the
Yeah.
field or.
So what we talked about with Lee earlier, that was for the whole system for the city. Then each
Right.
department is going to be probably cell phones or tablets. Okay.
If you have no other questions on development services, page 125 for GIS. Capital request is to replace a vehicle in the amount of $35,000. The proposed GIS budget is $396,685. This budget is pretty much been in line for the last several years with not many increases. And so what you're seeing on the side are huge percentage increases based on it being moved from basically one org to another. That's the main thing you're seeing. That has been pretty consistent on the overall budget over the years. That division has 2 employees.
So you're saying because it's like this because it moved from IT back to
That's
the,
correct.
I got you.
That's correct.
I was just asking, they've never had travel and training before, now all of a sudden it's 6,700 or 6,690.
They did have, it's 4,000 budgeted for this year, but it's back under IT 1520. So you'll,
Say had 4,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So for, at the end of the year, what we're gonna do is, journal those over and switch that fund back so you have history. Because we only have 1 year under IT, 1 year in the next year under development services. We're gonna just kind of realign it so that you have that history
Okay.
moving forward. That'll be in the final budget amendment, you'll see that. So we'll take, Public Works, if we go to page 130. They're requesting $970,000 in capital, with $45,000 for the lift upgrade, $25,000 for tire balancing machine, $50,000 to replace replace traffic signal control boxes at George and Broad and Oaks and South Glen Burnie intersections, $350,000 to replace existing street sweeper, $20,000 to replace existing asphalt roller, $75,000 for the compact excavator, $130,000 to replace a self-contained leaf collector, $25,000 for gooseneck equipment trailer, and $250,000 for sidewalk and curb improvements.
I thought we just bought a steamroller last year.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. We had asphalt roller in last year's budget.
We bought a paving machine in last year's budget, I believe, but the roller was new for this year's budget. Yeah.
I can show you in the book.
Maybe it was in the budget, they just didn't buy it.
Yeah, that could have been.
Can you get it ordered before June 30?
We'll definitely verify that.
Okay. So on page 131, Public Works Administration is a budget of $603,956. It's actually decreased because of some offsetting budgets. For example, on page 132, we reduced the S&M contracts, so that saved them $32,500 in that area. They just haven't had expenditures in the prior fiscal years. We see the 300%, which is $300 for the community engagement. That's again for New Bern 101. There are a couple other areas there with supplies and of course the IT equipment, there's a reduction there. Page 133 is the insurance division, and that's $1,216,600. There is an increase of 24% in the property and equipment, and then 9.2% in the liability insurance. If you're good, we can move on to page 134 for the garage, which is a budget of $1,017,970. You'll see an increase for the vacation payout. We have anticipation of having to pay that out next year. And everything else looks about the same until we get to page 135. The public, it's about halfway down on that first section, R&M buildings restricted. Public Works has requested to turn a storage building into a diesel machine shop, and they're anticipating on an estimate of $150,000 in savings per year if they do that, so that would be about $25,000. And then down at the bottom of the page, there's the last two line items, the shop charges and the allocation for the general fund. These two lines are typically can short up at the end of the year. These are where we capture costs for, so basically at year end it's short up, and the enterprise funds are billed for theirs throughout the year for their respective fair share, and for the allocation, and then it's also allocated to the general fund. So all that offsetting is done, and it's usually done at the end of the year. And we went ahead and just added it this year. That's why you see that increase in there. We felt that would be a better way to handle that. And then on page 136, they have a small increase for the uniforms. We see the increase of the fuel charges and garage supplies. The other equipment at the bottom of the page is for the lift upgrade alignment head for $45,000 and that tire balancing machine for $25,000. If you're good, we can move to page 137 for public buildings. And that budget is $1,133,199. Overall 4% increase. On page 138, you'll see an increase in temporary health services and cleaning services.
So Kim, the cleaning service, is that for all the partners within the city? That 125,000?
I think it's most of them, but George would have to, all the general fund ones at least.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I think we would be moving to 140 for streets, unless you have any other questions.
Kim, I'll skip on page 141 on street lights. We're budgeting 750. Year to date, we're at 367. So again, not knowing when that actually is through, that still seems to be a significant increase. Do we know what that's for?
Yes. Yeah. So this relates to the correct last board meeting when we had the utility bill correction. And then Charlie did an estimate for next year for us. And so that's estimated with those changes, what we would be looking at for next year. The correction has had 60 lights added to Public Works, 60 street lights that were not being billed to the city, and then some rate adjustments. And that went back to July 1st. And that added approximately $20,000 per month than what we were paying before. So we do expect to see even more next year as well, as they're continuing with their audit.
I'm concerned with street resurfacing. It seems like we're getting backwards and backwards every year from that standpoint. Only 400 and several years ago, it was estimated that we needed to be spending about $1 million a year to keep up with what we've got,
So the current year revised budget of that $800,000, that includes a rolled PO from the prior year as well. I can pull it up to see what we actually had in the original budget. It was, $400,000 in the original budget.
How much power bill money do we have?
Powell bill money, what's our revenue on that? Should be in here somewhere.
Estimate's 990,000, but we don't have it out quite, they don't have it out yet.
At page 30, 990.
How many, what page?
30.
30.
The revenues.
Thank you.
And I did, while we're at that point, I did find the vibratory roller for last year. It actually was under Parks and Rec.
Different type of roller.
Same price, but and same time.
Good memory. So are we ready to move?
No. What was page 30?
Powell bill.
Okay.
So we're estimated to get 990 and we're spending 400.
Where's the rest of it go?
George can explain, there are some other expenses that we can.
George, you getting this money?
Street lights.
But before he starts, I do want to say that anytime that we have any leftover, at the end of the year, it's rolled and it's in the restricted fund balance.
There are other items that also get included other than just resurfacing within road maintenance. So, road repairs that our asphalt crew does, anything within that right of way, our street sweeping time goes against the PAL bill. So there are other services that are provided or compensated for that we use the PAL bill to make up those numbers.
The street sweeping services are provided?
Yeah, it's a PAL bill eligible item. So the time, the machinery and the man hours on that machine is included in a weekly report that we include on PAL bill eligible items for our final. So,
Well, we're in desperate need of providing us some street maintenance, repaving. And I know $400,000 won't pave what? Half a mile or so?
about a
Mile of streets. I'm in favor, really, if you want to know the truth, and put a halt on some sidewalks this year and up the paving a little bit.
It's definitely swung in the past few
Yeah.
years.
Yes. This use a little bit of money and maintain the sides and repair the sidewalks that we have and not construct any new ones, and take this money and do some paving on these roads that we've got that are in terrible condition. It's like riding a roller coaster driving down South Front Street down by the convention center.
When's the new street survey gonna be ready?
It's budgeted for this, in this plan.
Okay. We desperately need that survey.
Is that the one with the road quality and all that, everything
Yeah.
included in it? Okay. So George, question. Here you got the sidewalks, you got $30,000. What is that for?
That's
Other than-
for in-house concrete repairs on sidewalks. So our concrete crew, in addition, does repairs.
So
Okay.
the 250 is for new sidewalks?
Would be for new sidewalks or large areas that need to be remediated.
We've provided $250,000 for new sidewalks every year for the past several years. I'm in favor of moving that money into some paving this year.
Well, I'm not in favor of moving all of it into paving, because I have a sidewalk that I want down Garden Street. That's a dire need for the pedestrians and citizens that live over there.
I thought we were already working on that one. Barbara? I thought we were already working on that one. Hadn't
No
they been
money's been-
surveyed it?
No money's been, to my knowledge.
But
no money's
have you
been-
surveyed it or anything? Is it, I reckon, is it doable?
Yeah, and that's the issue that Alderman Bess and I've walked in several times, and there's certain areas where there's such limited right-of-way. We have looked at a recent option to go through some city parcels. There are some areas of environmental conflict that we'd have to deal with, but nothing significant to at least get us away from the backside of Henderson Park onto the Sutton and trying to get Jordan.
Give us direction.
So, George, please, can I ask you a couple more questions? Okay, in reference to the Garden Street sidewalk, at this point, there's been no monies other than the survey that was done.
We have had a consultant go look at the area to see what kind of environmental conflicts we have there.
Okay.
Currently, we have no drawn plans, but he sees no heavy lifting permit-wise to get through there with the pedestrian walkway. It will need to coincide or be a part of the stream restoration where they do the backside of Henderson Park on that grant, so we can tie it to what is intended on the backside of the park.
Okay, when you say the backside of the park, that would be including the walkway from Henderson Park going across through
Yes, ma'am, that's,
The-
yeah,
the area
That's
that we
correct.
talked
That's
about
correct. That's
that would
correct.
connect into the sidewalk
Correct.
on Garden Street.
correct.
Okay. So,
How much money are you talking about, Barbara? Do you have any idea on doing the work you want to be done over there?
George, that's a George question.
Just a close estimate?
Yeah, $75,000, we could probably get around, we could get to the corner. Now, we do run into some conflicts trying to get around the sharp turn there on Sutton, that will still need to be resolved.
Okay, and the $75,000, you're just talking about the bridge cut.
The
The
bridge
connect-
work and that little bit of sidewalk area to get to the corner, where we run out of city property or city right of way, and then there are several private parcels where we do not have sufficient right of way right now.
So that monies is not included. That's not in that
It won't get us
$75,000. Can't be. Can't be. Not for those two parcels.
Oh, that's not including purchasing parcels or
Right,
right of
okay.
way, correct?
So then you're talking about what? Just say $200,000? For-
It's difficult to say when
I
I'm in
understand.
negotiation for these right of ways for property.
I understand. But just to say the two parcels that's there, this is hypothetical or whatever, the two parcels is there, with putting in the sidewalk there, far as the sidewalk is concerned, from Sutton on down to Garden, what we spoke of.
To get us around the corner structurally, we could probably construct the entire thing for $100,000. So that's the 75 I just mentioned, another 25 get us around the corner. That does not include right-of-way purchase or property purchase.
Okay.
And you don't even know if you can get right-of-way purchases done, correct?
Correct.
Well, and while he's working on that, I mean, I would like to make a recommendation that we take $200,000 of that money and move it into paving. And, when he gets everything settled for Barbara's, sidewalk over there, if he don't have the money to do it, he'd come back here and talk to us about it. But I'd like to see a little more money done in paving and this year just put sidewalks a little bit on the back burner. You know, we're doing more sidewalks than we are paving.
So do we need that study first when we talk about paving?
Oh, there's plenty of paving that can be done without the study. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a consultant.
The study will rank them for us, so we'll know which ones we need to do first. But I'm sure if George had $50 million, he could spend $50 million on paving.
I would also offer to you, I think on our next board meeting, the Bike and Pedestrian Committee will be on there. And then the Bike and Pedestrian Committee intent is to prioritize areas and sidewalks and bikeways and stuff like that. So, and search out for grants rather than relying just only on city funds. So I would not be opposed to what you're talking about, Alderman Astor, because hopefully this committee actually would go and find more funds for sidewalks and bikeways.
Well, yeah, if that's what you need, the motion, I make a motion that we move $200,000 out of sidewalks and into the paving.
Question. So the $50,000 are remainder, so it can, so whatever George need to go ahead on with my project? Is that what you're saying?
Or whatever he needs for.
To get the easements or
Well,
whatever is needed?
Whatever, I don't know, I mean,
I'm sorry, can you? Okay.
Have a motion,
Second.
have a second. Any discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Astor.
yes. Sorry.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Brinson,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
We're at 3:30, so Foster and I are going to be participating in our meeting remotely, it appears. So we've got 30 minutes now because we definitely have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So where are we, Mr. Manager?
So,
Public works completed.
no, I have stormwater.
Before you move, I might have missed it, 72890 on page 141, that miscellaneous other services,
Is that the,
it's the extra $20,000. I was wondering what that,
is that the survey? She's gonna double check, but I think it's the survey.
the street survey we're talking about?
Yes.
Were you good with page 143?
I was sitting on 141.
We can move on, so you can come
Okay,
back to that.
okay. So, if you're good with page 143, that ends, streets, and then we're moving to 144, stormwater. Their budget is $793,106. There's not much of a change, 0.3%. So I will highlight, they had a little bit in travel and training that they added. And then the land rentals, consist of the Norfolk Southern Railroad crossing agreements. They increased temporary help services as well.
So the Norfolk Railroad crossing agreement, what is that for? George, no?
Any place within public works, either streets or if we have storm drainage that we need an easement or have a crossing, we have to pay an annual fee to have that crossing across Norfolk Southern Railroad track or underneath it, and it's an annual fee.
That's new, correct?
They have transitioned, prior years, they allowed you to pay a one-time fee, and now they have backed that out and gone to an annual fee. So I will say that we did lose one at the head of Taberna when DOT took over the entrance to Taberna as part of the Highway 70 project. So we're down one. We try not to have them, but it's an unnecessary thing. We just have to do it some places.
That's a tough pill to swallow right there. But you can't fight the railroad, so.
So, we did receive confirmation, or Tanya confirmed that it's the asphalt condition rating survey for the $20,000 that you just inquired about. Okay. On page 146, there was an increase in street repair and IT restricted, which were some iPads. If you have no other questions, we would be complete with public works. Page 147 consists of our debt payments. General fund portion. Page 148 is transferred to other funds into grant funds, and that is our commitments that we make sometimes with match. If there's any grants out there that has a match requirement, that would go to match to the grants funds. And then that completes general fund.
Any more questions on that for staff? All right, Foster, I guess we're going to look at ARP projects.
We're going to look at the impact of the revaluation now. Kim?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
On your screen, you'll see the calculation for the revaluation. The current tax rate right now is the 0.4822%. As of May 6th, which was also confirmed, April 6th, which was also confirmed on May 1st, that we're still at the 4.7 billion valuation. And the revenue neutral tax rate calculation is calculated at 3.3734%. That calculation also includes a 2.98% average growth of assessed values, and that's since the last revaluation in 2016. The total revenue tax increase, or tax revenue increase, would be $509,589. For every additional 1 cent increase in the tax rate is $472,000, or a cut of $472,000 if you wanted to decrease it by that, okay? The recommendation to balance this budget that you're looking at today would be 0.4359%.
So with that rate, that does include implementing, like I said yesterday, the second phase of that salary survey, a cost of living adjustment of 3%, and a merit pay of up to 2%. And we took into account the CPI ending December 2022 at 6.5%. Let's So with the salary study implemented and with the 5%, the impact on the general fund additional is $1.2 million for the enterprise funds. That's $635,000. Kim talked about sales tax revenues.
So this chart shows you some strong sales tax growth. We've been continuing to grow. We do receive warnings often to be conservative. Don't expect us to keep, growing as fast as it is. I'm sorry. This chart shows you the sales tax for New Bern. And we budgeted, we still budgeted a growth, but we were conservative, I feel, at 11.9 million.
What do we budget for this budget year?
For 2023.
Yep.
Tanya's gonna grab that really quick. I know we're estimated at 11.3. That'll take a minute, so we can, if you have other questions, I'll take those, because I think she's got to add a couple lines. Okay, just page 30 is general fund. So by 11100105112 and 51214.
So 10 million, and we're at 11.3 estimated.
So there's $1 million.
So we've heard your comments along and made adjustments based on any concerns you may have had. Any other comments you have for us, anything you'd like for us?
Can you go back to that first slide you showed? I want the board to understand. Yep. So our current tax rate is 4,822 for every $100. The valuation went up about 42%. So in order for our tax revenue neutral rate to come in based off the new evaluation, and that includes the 3% growth?
Yep, and within the calculation, it takes the average growth from the last time that we had the reevaluation, which was 2016.
Okay.
So it calculates that for you, yes.
So for our citizens and our taxpayers and homeowners, in order for them to pay the same thing roughly that they paid last year in City of New Bern property tax, the tax rate would need to be 37.34. And the recommendation is 43.59. Which is 6 cents roughly, give or take. Which if you take 6 cents times 472,000,
Just short of 3 million.
so we're asking for a $3 million increase in our tax rate for general fund only.
That's correct.
6 cents per what?
6 cents above what they're paying now is a
Correct.
fair statement to say.
Yeah.
And just to complete that thought, that's 6 cents per thousand of their assessment.
100.
6 cents per 100. So an individual could take their assessment, multiply it by that, and figure out what their proposed tax burden would be.
In addition to the county?
In addition to,
Correct.
Do you have any idea what the county's gonna do?
their budget meetings start next week.
They got a $6 million Shawner property they have to pay for sometime.
And we have not heard what they're planning.
In addition to the reevaluation of property tax, correct? With the county?
So with the revaluation, for city tax, this is how this would be affected, this would affect us.
Now,
Well-
so with us, the increase plus the county increase with reevaluation?
They are doing the same thing we are doing. They're looking at their current tax rate, their revenue neutral rate, and then determining where their tax rate is gonna be for 23-24. They're doing the same thing, which is why I stated their budget meetings are next week, so they're not gonna have that discussion until next week, as far as where their rates are gonna be. But yes, potentially, could be more.
When is the finalization, Foster, for this budget to be approved? So that,
The goal is for this budget to be approved
I know you gave us the information, but I don't
June
have.
13th
Okay,
of
June
this year.
13th.
So moving forward, based on whatever comments we receive from you today, we're going to incorporate that for next week's budget presentation. Then we will have a public hearing on May 23rd. Any comments we receive or any direction we receive from the board, we'll make any adjustments we need to. And then on June 13th, we will make the request to adopt the budget.
Me personally, I would like to wait to see what happens with the county. Because I do know, the county was in, some recommendations was that they weren't, some of the commissioners weren't too happy about this reval. So, you know, based on what the county,
I mean, the revow, it is what it is. I mean, there's really nothing that anybody can do or change, and it's really,
for his tax rate, I'm talking about,
Yeah.
for them increasing the tax rate.
yeah.
And
what
that's
it all
based
matters.
off of what, the new tax rate would be, based off, I mean, the revenue from it would be coming from the new revals. So,
Actually,
for what we're looking at here, we're only looking at, we're really only asking for 1 cent. But you're saying, this is 1 cent, but you're saying we need 6 cents.
To balance the budget as is presented. And if you want to reduce that to get closer to revenue neutral, or to go to revenue neutral, that's what you need to tell us. 1 cent is $472,000, and that's what we would either look at cutting out of this budget. You know, we never really like balancing the budget with fund balance. That's one of the last things we want to do. All things always come up. Preference is always to build on that fund balance. But this is where it gets tough. Because, you know, this is overall $150 million budget. The general fund is, what is that general fund number total? $49 million. So
Were we provided a hard copy of this presentation? It's not in here.
Right here?
Yes,
No, we can do that.
I'd like that.
Okay.
and I want to correct my statement. The county's first budget meeting is May 15th, so not next week, but the week after. So they will start on May 15th.
You looking for initial feedback, or are you just? letting it
absolutely, any
marinate?
feedback you'd like to give us.
May 19th is kind of late.
Well, I'll tell you what I wanted. I think I'd personally wait and see what transpires with the county.
Well, what effect that's gonna have on us, that, really? I mean,
Our assessed values come from the county.
well, we know what the assessed value is
I
gonna be,
know,
we just don't know what their
but-
rate's gonna be.
I'm looking at it from a perspective of if the county, we have city and county taxes. So if the county tax rates goes up tremendously, and then here we are putting an additional 6 cents, I'm looking at it from that perspective for a citizen. You know, you got county and city taxes there,
Well,
and both taxes is being
That I
raised.
agree with, but I mean, maybe it's time that we ask the city manager to go back and weed through some of this stuff, and I mean, if we can get it down to 4 cents, he can cut $900,000 out of this budget or something. I mean, we've got line items in this budget that we've never had before.
Yes.
You know, what, the community service, how many $10,000 of those did we have? You know, there's almost $500,000 in travel and transportation.
Out of the $3 million of increased cost or revenue that you're asking for, how much of that out of the general fund is personnel?
About 65%, 65%-ish is general fund.
So I think
Personnel.
we would need to take a look at the 35% that's not personnel, because, I mean, I will tell you that the city population has not grown that much in the last 9 years since I've been on the board, but we've increased our personnel by about 15 positions. So, and I'm not advocating we get rid of employees. I'm just saying that the city hasn't grown that much, and we've grown 15 of roughly 15 heads in the past 9 years. And
Yeah, well, a lot of that was due to when we were in budget trouble and we let several positions go away. And now they were asking them back. And then one big chunk of it was firefighters.
and telecommunicators. I think we added six telecommunicators. But if the board feels strongly that the salary study needs to be fully implemented, then that sort of takes personnel off the table, so that leaves you with 35% of your remaining deficit to work with. And you also don't know, you're going to implement the second half of the salary study along with a COLA, along with the merit increase, which is, how much is that?
3% COLA, and in terms of the cost, what cost up for that 5%?
2%, 3 COLA and 2% merit.
That's correct.
Just another 5.
Using 65% of that 3 million, that's 4 cents.
That's what?
4 cents.
Okay.
65% of the 3 million. That's 4 cents.
I agree with Alderman Astor that maybe some of this stuff, it's in this budget this year, maybe it needs to be looked at, scaled down some, scaled back some.
I agree. But what our citizens also have to take in consideration is this. We go to the store today and we were paying 99 cents for a dozen eggs a year or so ago. Now we're paying $5 and $6 for them. The price of diesel fuel has gone up quite a bit. Our chemicals have gone up. Our labor costs have gone up. We had to go up on the labor and pay our employees or we were losing them. By the time we get them trained and they can go somewhere else and make more money, Rocky Mount Police Department's just now advertised they're starting their police officers at $60,000 a year. That's going to have an effect on us. So we can't mess with the salaries. The salaries have to stay as is. We've got to continue with our salary survey, what the salary survey recommended, or we're going to start back losing linemen and police officers and firefighters. But things have gone up for us just like they've gone up for the homeowners. I wish I could pay $2 a gallon for gasoline now. And I made note of some of this stuff when I was going through. It's just escaped me. But the fire department, for example, what were you paying a couple of years ago for turnout gear?
$2,000.
How much?
$2,000.
And what are you paying for it now? And I know the police department's struggling with the prices of increases on like ammunition. I know that's got to probably doubled in price. So our citizens have to realize that we're suffering just like they are. So there's only two things to do. You can either raise the tax rate a little bit or cut services. And I don't think there's many people in this town that want us to cut services.
Kim, what's our fund balance today in the general fund?
You have that? Sorry. So as of our last report, the general fund balance was not calculated. I'm sorry.
Sorry?
We took it the year end. I was thinking of cash on hand. I have that. I would have to calculate that for you.
Okay.
It's typically done at the end of the year because it changes significantly. It's not like our expenses are all the same, so.
I think we definitely need to see what that number is, both percentage-wise and dollar amount. And I definitely think that the pencil needs to be sharpened on the budget. I think there's some stuff in here that could be adjusted. Because we've got growth. I mean, we've got $1 million growth in sales tax growth. That's, we've already shown that. So, I mean, that's $1 million that's in the general fund. And we've got a $3 million deficit essentially that we're trying to close. You got $1 million in that, understanding that, you know, hopefully that is going to continue. But the thing about fund balance is you spend it, it goes. And a lot of these expenses that we're talking about are recurring expenses, especially personnel, that you're going to have to find a way to pay for next year. So I'm not an advocate of just kicking the can down the road just to try to get through this year. But I do think that obviously things are pretty strong from a development standpoint and sales tax, so.
We will have to, I mean, if we'll have to do something down the road, we will have to increase at some point.
Right.
Because we can't continue to sustain it as all of the rates increase every year.
I just hate to do it all at one time, but, yeah,
I think 6 is
what if we,
small.
what would it, the increase be on a $250,000 house if we went to 4 cents?
What'd
You
you
know,
say?
do that in your head.
What, $200,000?
A $250,000 house if we went to 4 cents.
I know a $200,000 house is 6% is gonna add on $160
$100.
So you raise $100 per household.
What are you talking about?
If you added 4 cents to
Oh,
it.
4 cents, okay, I was gonna say.
And
This.
what's, what is it? So Foster, do you think you could whittle on it a little bit without hurting too bad?
We certainly can.
I know all the department heads are out there saying, God, I wish we would have to hear that. But I would really rather give our employees their raises. And have maybe cut out an out-of-town training session somewhere here and there or something, but,
I think you could definitely cut your training and travel budget. That's easy.
yeah. Let them, if they want to, if they have some extra money in their regular budget, they can use that. It's in the pool, you know. All right. So when do you think you can get back to us, and do we need to meet again briefly to discuss it further? Mayor?
I think we could add this on to a meeting. I mean, you're making a presentation
We'll
Tuesday
make a
night.
presentation, so we'll provide the update.
That's when you'll hear your feedback from your constituents, is when he makes his presentation that the tax rate is gonna go up. That's when we'll hear from.
Well, they'll probably hear this too, so.
So you're looking at talking about 4%?
Well, I just suggested if we could cut $900,000 out of the budget, it would lower the tax rate to 4 cents on the 100 instead of 6 cents on the 100, which would mean on a $250,000 home, $150 versus $100.
Where you get that figure from? A $250,000 home at, you're talking about a tax rate from 0.48 to 52.22?
No, go down.
Huh?
Go down, not up.
The current tax rate is 0.4822.
No.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant because of the, yeah.
No, I was figuring out the taxes on a, he was saying what the taxes would be on a home at $250,000.
What the figure was at 6 cents on the tax rate based off of the new valuation and the new tax rate, it would be $150 more than what they're paying
So
today.
he's talking about not .4822, he's talking about .3734, which is the revenue neutral.
Right.
Tax rate.
Right, okay.
Does that make
So above revenue neutral.
Yep.
Because that's post revaluation.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock.
And I just want to say, I know you gotta go, but I wanted to ask also, when can we schedule some time to discuss that FEMA issue?
We can add another workshop. We can look at adding another workshop. We'll have some dates, at the next meeting.
It wouldn't take, it'd take less than an hour, I would think, to discuss it. But it's something that we need to move on while we got their attention.
Yeah, because we've got a few other things to talk about as well, so we can.
We always have the option, I know nobody probably wants to hear this, but we have the option of continuing this meeting. If you wanted to continue this meeting to, say, 5 o'clock on Tuesday and come in an hour early, we could do that. So, it's up to the board.
Yes.
So, my staff is back at the office listening and ran the numbers, and our rough estimate for general fund balance is 27.2.
Percent or $1 million?
$1 million.
Oh,
I was gonna say too.
So we're healthy, we're very healthy, we have a very healthy fund balance, but, I think that's gonna be about 50%.
But he said he had something else he wanted to discuss.
what time does the board want to meet on Tuesday?
Can we do it at 4?
When is,
If we're gonna talk nothing but FEMA, an hour is all we need.
Well, we got a few other things that we didn't get to on this, which won't take very long. I think we did 4, we had plenty of time to take a break and find the board dinner if we needed to.
I make a motion that we continue this meeting till, what time did you say?
recess? Yeah,
Recess.
4 p.m.
Until 4 on Tuesday, whatever that date is,
May 9th.
May
May 9th.
Have a motion to recess this meeting till 4 on Tuesday, May 9th. Do we have a second? Have a second by Alderman Kinsey. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're in
We gotta
recess.
do this. We have to discuss.